Would you say was there something ideological pushing Epstein towards his dealings regarding these contracts or regarding Israel in general?
Yeah, I think there's no doubt about it. Epstein was somebody who was very, pro-Israel, you could say. He was extremely interested in Israel's security interests. It was almost taken as a given that he would be. He would just naturally do things or seek out opportunities to further Israeli political and security interests during this time. He expressed views in his emails that comported with that on numerous occasions, and his actions were all geared around that as well too. No, it's not to say that he worked for the Mossad or something like that. I think he was actually much more powerful and influential than that. But he was part of this network of wealthy individuals around the world who were pro-Israel, who would seek out opportunities to benefit Israel, work with Israeli political figures like Barak and others to do that. Yeah.
Let me actually stop you on that one because that is an important note. What you said about the Mossad, because as in podcast land and all over the internet, there's been all kinds of things being said that he was allegedly a Mossad agent and whatnot. But it is interesting what you're saying. You're actually saying that he's more powerful than that. I just wanted to unpack that quickly with you.
Yeah, so we're gonna try to see if we can, write more stories about this to kind of explain the history of who Epstein was and so forth, and the networks that he emerged from, and who he knew and he worked with and so forth. But if I were to put it simply, for the time being, there's like a network of billionaires, you could say. There's actually has been reported in the past. It's something called the Study Group in the U.S. that was set up in the '90s by this like several dozen very powerful business magnates and so forth, most of whom were very pro-Israel. That was kind of the central organizing interest that they had. And Epstein was he tied to a particular gentleman named Leslie Wexner. He was a billionaire who became rich from fashion and uh, consumer clothing goods. Victoria's Secret was one of the very important brands that he was associated with. And Epstein was made power of attorney over Wexner's fortune in the early '90s, and the circumstances, which are very, mysterious and really not very well known, were very surprising to people at the time because he wasn't really anybody on paper at that time. But he became basically a billionaire. He became effectively, the controller of this extremely powerful billionaire's fortune and philanthropic foundation as well too. And in by doing so, he became, very rich and powerful. Now, his time, if you were a Mossad agent or something like that, you're an employee in a hierarchy. You are somebody who's receiving a salary. You're answerable to the head of the Mossad. You're answerable, in theory, to the civilian government of Israel and so forth. And, that's in a way is an influential role, but in a way you're kind of just an employee, as I said, you're kind of just someone, a cog in a machine and so forth. Epstein was definitely above and beyond that. He was part of this global transnational network of people who was free of any institutional constraints. He's not answerable to any civilian authorities and so forth. So, the Mossad, so to speak, in some way was very much beneath him. He was someone who had much more freedom to act, freedom, had more resources at a personal level by far than any, Mossad official, you could say. And he
Is it the
wasn't
opposite
answerable to
then?
anybody.
Did
Yeah.
Mossad work for him?
It's more like that, yeah. It's more like, when you look at these emails of him and Barack, they were deploying these Israeli intelligence-linked firms, these foreign countries. There was no indication there that, that they even knew the people he was deploying really knew what the whole story was, or who was pulling the strings, or what they were involved in, and so forth. They were kind of employees doing their job, being directed by these powerful guys. So it is more accurate to say what you said, that it was more like the Mossad was working for him, whether they knew it or not, to do this stuff. And it's very fascinating because Israel is kind of being used as like a base by people, and not just Israel, but I would say other countries like the UAE and other Gulf Arab countries. They were also arguably being used in the same way. They were like being used as sovereign bases for the storage and accumulation of capital and the deployment of military intelligence resources around the world. Somewhere you can hide out, somewhere you can, organize yourselves in a sovereign basis. And it's kind of funny because in some way, like Israelis were also victims of Epstein in a sense because their country was. I don't think if you're like selling falafel in Haifa or something, you are plugged into these conversations these billionaires are having and so forth. Their country is being used as a base. outside the democratic purview of the Israeli government itself. So the citizens of the country had no real transparency or awareness of any of this. It was to the benefit, I guess, to Israel's security benefit, as defined by some segment of the establishment, but more so to the benefit of this, transnational organization, or organization maybe is too formal a word, but this network of people, of which Epstein was a very, very important person. It was kind of more like organized crime, which used
Really,
certain
like the
countries
mafia.
and certain states as bases.